The Vanishing Fog. It started with a fog. Not the usual kind that blanketed the small town of Hollow Pines every fall, but something far thicker, almost alive. People said it rolled in with the sunrise, its tendrils creeping through the streets like searching fingers. The morning it first appeared, the town's weatherman, Harold Fisher, stared at his radar in confusion. There was no storm on the map, no atmospheric conditions to explain the anomaly. Yet there it was, a gray, swirling mass that defied logic. By noon, the fog had swallowed the entire town. People tried to go about their day, but something about the mist unnerved them. It muffled sound and obscured sight, and there was an oppressive heaviness to it, as if the air itself were watching. By nightfall, the first person disappeared. Mary Ann Chambers, the owner of the local diner, was last seen closing up shop. Her husband, Frank, called the sheriff when she didn't return home, but the only trace of her was a single shoe left in the alley behind the diner. The fog seemed thicker there, almost impenetrable. Sheriff Whitaker organized a search party, but they found nothing, no signs of struggle, no trail to follow. Just fog. The next morning, the fog remained. More people disappeared. A jogger on the outskirts of town, a teacher on her way to school, a group of teenagers who thought it would be fun to explore the misty woods. Each time, the pattern was the same, their last known location marked by an unnerving density in the fog. By the third day, panic set in. People locked their doors and refused to step outside. Hollow Pines felt like a ghost town, silent except for the occasional scream that echoed through the fog, a scream that was quickly swallowed by the mist. Rebecca Hart, a reporter for the town's small newspaper, decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and her camera, she ventured into the fog, determined to uncover the truth. "This is Rebecca Hart, reporting live from the center of this strange phenomenon," she whispered into her recorder. Her voice trembled, despite her efforts to stay calm. She wandered the streets for hours, snapping photos and recording notes. The fog seemed to thicken around her, and she felt an unshakable sense of being watched. Then, she saw it, a shadow moving within the mist. It was humanoid, but its limbs were too long, its movements too fluid. She froze as the shadow turned toward her, its glowing eyes piercing through the gray. Rebecca screamed and ran. Her flashlight flickered and died, leaving her in total darkness. The last thing her recorder captured was her ragged breathing and a low, guttural growl. Her camera was found the next day, lying in the middle of Main Street. The photos on it showed nothing but fog, and one blurry image of a skeletal hand reaching toward the lens. By the end of the week, more than half the town had vanished. Those who remained decided to flee, but the fog wouldn't let them. Cars stalled as soon as they hit the town's edge, their engines choking on the dense air. Phones and radios ceased to work. It was as if Hollow Pines had been cut off from the rest of the world. On the 10th day, Sheriff Whitaker gathered the remaining townsfolk in the church, the only place that felt safe. They prayed, huddled together as the fog pressed against the stained glass windows. The sheriff stood guard at the door, his shotgun in hand. "Whatever this is, it's not taking any more of us," he vowed. But the fog had other plans. As the clock struck midnight, the church doors blew open. The fog poured in, thicker and darker than ever. The townsfolk screamed as shadows emerged from the mist, their glowing eyes filled with malice. Sheriff Whitaker fired his shotgun, but the pellets vanished into the fog, useless. One by one, the shadows took them, dragging them into the mist, despite their desperate struggles. When dawn broke, the church was empty. The entire town was gone, swallowed by the fog. Only one person remained, a traveler passing through, who found Hollow Pines eerily quiet and shrouded in mist. He reported the strange silence to authorities, but when they arrived, there was no trace of the town. Just an empty field where Hollow Pines had once stood. To this day, the area remains a barren wasteland. Locals in nearby towns tell stories of hearing faint screams on foggy nights, and some claim to see glowing eyes watching from the mist. The vanishing fog, they call it, a tale to scare children and keep curious wanderers away. But sometimes, on the foggiest mornings, a lone shoe or a rusted camera is found in the field, as if the fog is reminding the world that it's still there, waiting. The end.